I wish Sophie were here because she always likes to hear quotes or things about Danica Seleskovich. Seleskovich used to, when we were all around a table in salle 7, the room 7, which was our, now looked back upon as a, I don't know how many of us have used the word torture chamber, but that's sort of the feeling. Someone would give a speech. Often what we did was prepare speeches. And then she would call on someone, and that person would now be on the hot spot. And it was really, I used to say I'd rather interpret for Gorbachev and Reagan over the brink of nuclear war than interpret in front of Seleskovich. I'm sorry to say that, but it's obviously an exaggeration, but does convey sort of the feeling. Anyway, and then so somebody would start to do a consecutive, and the person might be stuck, and people next to her would spontaneously whisper or try to show something. And Seleskovich would say, oui, oui, allez-y, soufflez. In other words, go ahead, help your colleague. And she never came out and said it, at least that I heard, but I believe that what she meant was, you're going to be doing that when you're working, and it's good to learn how to do it. And that's just a little anecdote to tell you about how, yes, you should be sitting next to your colleague who's doing consecutive, writing down all the numbers. If you really want to do a good job, write all the numbers for your colleague. And if you can see that technical terms are coming up and are posing a problem, look them up. Nowadays you can. In those days, there's no dictionary was fast enough, but you might have it in your head. And so start creating a little list of technical terms, or the person may look at you like, what the hell did that mean? And then just keep going. And you can attempt, although I generally would fail because my handwriting is so bad, to write down something that would be helpful. If it's a simple thing, like what was that number, you can just write it down. If it was that yes or no, you could write yes or no. So anyway, yes, Adrian, you should be helping your colleague in any way you can. Let me add, though, that I'll tell you something that would always offend me. Never, in my book, never correct a colleague in front of the client. If you hear your colleague say something that's off and you really think it was not the same as what you heard, be very respectful of your colleague when you decide to let your colleague know that you disagree with something they said. Because it really is undermining the person if you do it in a way that the client can see. And it also undermines you as a team, because now you look like a team that's bickering or could possibly be bickering. So be very discreet. And maybe I'm oversensitive, but when colleagues do that to me in front of the client, I just can't believe it. How can you do that? You should do it in a way, especially in the booth, when the mics are off. Go, hey, this is not what I heard. I think you got that wrong. And just look for an opportunity where the client can't hear it. So that's a little side note that I have about that. Is that good, Adrian? Did I catch what you were asking about? You should try to, as in any job, try to make sure that you will have conditions for success. So it's not always possible to have a table. So the speaker might be standing at a podium and you will not have a table, although you should have a table. You may be out in a field and you obviously don't have a table. But what's wrong is that if all the participants have a table and you do not have a table to write your notes on. That's wrong. You may not win in your fight to get conditions like that, but you should try. And you could consider not doing the job if you think it's they're treating you badly. In fact, for example, when I was in Europe and we had to be put in the same hotel as the delegates. And the delegates could be ministers, and so it's a very good hotel. And often they will try to put you in a hotel down the road that is cheaper. Not only is that sort of an insult, but okay, we could say that we are service personnel and we don't deserve the great treatment that the delegates deserve. Although there's an argument that we do, because certainly we are much smarter than they are. The fact that you're down the road may hinder your work. If they go to their rooms during the break and gather documents and can rest, and you can't, that's going to be a problem. So there is something to be said for having equal conditions in that respect when you have a meeting. But, you know, a lot of those things have eroded. Some of them come from the day when interpreters were really stars and highly respected, because it was so odd to find somebody who could do the job. Nowadays we have many interpreting schools, and it's not, we can't demand as much as we used to. Any more questions about that? Any comments? Thank you, Raham. I'm going to go back to Rosemary, and I just want to compliment you on being very diplomatic and smooth and collegial in your approach. And you did communicate well with her. You could see that she was nodding when you said certain points about that you found were missing. For example, the link, it was very clear when you explained it. At one point I wondered, is she going to make this clear? Because you had 2 points. The first point which she got, and then you said there was a link, and then the second point. But she was nodding and she got the message, and I also understood that it was all going the way it should. In other words, she got exactly what you were saying, because when you first started out, you said, he said, blah, 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 blah. And I wasn't sure if you were going to say, and you didn't say that, or if you meant that she didn't say that. So I sort of recommend being a little bit explicit, like but it was clear, Rosemary. I'm just using this point to say it is helpful to be clear that what I heard was this, and you said that, but what came next was a link which you did not say, and things like that help, I think. But it was clear in the intonation and just the way you said it, and she got the message. But I'm just saying it is good to be clear. This is what you said, and that's for me what was wrong, and then try to zero in on what was wrong. You know, if it might be just the tense and you haven't said that, and the person doesn't know which thing it is. Yeah, there were a lot of fillers, Awa, and that's unusual for you, but you're under the weather a little bit. And there were not that many, but there were some. So the thing on smoke and smoking was interesting. It's a comment on the form, and it's natural for the English A to grab that. And it's natural for you as an English B to sort of fumble with it. The message is getting across, I think, with the word smoke, but it's not exactly right. Yeah. I've noticed that a little bit with you, and it happens with all of us. If I keep talking like I am now, and I'm not taking in any breath, I can sort of do it, just keep going, and I can sort of do it, and I can just keep going and taking in little tiny breaths like that. And you see and you can actually do it, but it creates this feeling of tension. Whereas if I take one good deep breath especially when there's a natural pause, But even if it's not at a natural pause, people can tell that you're just breathing. If I take one good deep breath, it'll be much, much better. And yeah, now that you mention it, you have had that tendency a little bit. So the cure for me would be to record yourself and listen to it and take the feedback from people. But it's not that terrible. It's not that bad. But it's good that you're working on it. That's the kind of thing that you need, that kind of feedback. We all need that, and you will get that. So did you follow what I was doing? You can, and I'm sure you've heard people do that. You arrive at the end of your actual available air, and you just take a small amount back in and keep going constantly, and you can actually do that by. Your lungs are sort of empty, but you fill them up by 10% each time, and you can actually keep talking forever. But it sounds bad, right? Did you sort of feel? Yeah. So that's the physics, the physiology of it, I think. Put a little sign in front of you, say deep breathing or something like that. I mean, that's what I would do. I have signs all over the place, and then I finally rip them down going, why is that still up there? I never did it, and I never will. No, that's a bad example. You should do it. The reformulating is a good thing, I think, because if you go back into a European language like French, it's true that much of the language will sound very similar. So anti-tobacco would be, pretty close to anti-tabagisme or something. And so you would go into something that would be very similar if you could. But the fact is that we will have to reformulate to some extent anyway. And even though there may be a cognate that sounds pretty good, like anti-tabagisme in the target language, it might not be what they usually say. And so you want to say what sounds natural and is as clear and unequivocal as possible. And it may not be that cognate that. So reformulating here is a good idea. And I must say that in Selevskevich's world, the reformulating was huge. And we were frequently complimented when we got away from the original wording and used target language that was really getting the information across in the most idiomatic, natural, and clear way. It must be clear. There was a little discussion that came up in the room I was in about the distinction between, say, tobacco, smoking, cigarettes. And let me point out that if I'm talking about, let's say, the dangers of sailboats, and offhandedly I say, more people die from drowning in sailboats than from even tobacco. And then I go on to talk about sailboats. And my whole talk is about sailboats. Then if you say instead of cigarettes, you say tobacco, or instead of tobacco, you say cigarettes, it's a slight, very slight problem, because everybody understands that it means inhaling cigarettes, smoke. However, if the person is now starting to dig in and make distinctions between nicotine, smoking, cigarettes, they may even get into pipes, smoke that's not inhaled, secondhand smoke, and so on and so forth. Now you need to be aware of how important each of these words is, because we're in the thick of the subject at hand, and each of these seemingly small details now become the main distinctions of the person's whole talk, right? So I'd just like to point out that sometimes you can switch one for the other because it's really not the topic and it covers very well the idea, and sometimes you cannot. I just wanted to point that out. I think you all see what I mean. And I there must be a name for that, but I don't know what it is. But and also the need of the meeting. If it's a meeting where the person is a politician just trying to say, look at me, I'm wonderful, and please vote for me, you know that that's the message and you need to be attuned to that message. I'm not saying you change anything or because of that, but if you're in a fix and you look at your notes and you don't remember if it's tobacco or cigarettes or smoking, it may not be worthwhile to stop and ask him, hey, was it this or that? Because that's just going to undermine his purpose. Whereas if you're in a meeting where a bunch of doctors are now making this fine distinction and they need to know, then it's a judgment call where you would probably say, okay, this is important. I can't read this, and I know that this is going to come up, and this is a distinction they are making, and so I'm going to ask. So the interpreter is aware of the purpose, and also, there's time constraints and just constraints of decorum. If there's only 2 people in the room who need you as an interpreter, and there's a room full of 100 people who have already understood the original, and it's a fine point, as I said, it's a politician. His main point is to show off, and it's now doesn't really matter whether he said cigarettes or smoking. You don't want to interrupt the flow of the meeting to get that point. Whereas in a courtroom or somewhere like that, where they're going to write it down and it may come up over and over again, you will. Okay, I'm just going over that. I'm sure that you all can all know that. All right, shall we move on? Oh, yeah, it cut you off, right? But this time it was 11 minutes, so I hope it was enough time. It was enough time? Not enough time. Well, we took a poll on this, and I kept upping it to try to satisfy. The higher we make it, the less listening we'll get to do. So, but if you have an opinion on this, that we should have more time in each breakout room, please express it in the form which is sent in the after. We could always extend it, but it will take away time from the listening part. So anyway, so let's go on to the next one. Yeah, I'm using a hello. We're all back, and I gave you 11 minutes that time plus the 30 seconds that it. If you have comments about, wanting less, maybe a less one session, and having a couple more minutes in each session, go ahead and say so. And you could say so here, or you could say so in the form that I send with the after practice email. There was a comment in one of the rooms I was in, which was that if you sound very confident and are good in your delivery, and you need to be careful not to use that to convey information that's not correct. Now, here, as we practice, I must say, if you have achieved that level of eye contact and speed and smoothness and credibility, if you have achieved that, but you still haven't achieved the accuracy in your notes and in your memory, just consider that you can check that box off, or at least you want to maintain that good delivery, that confident feel. You need that. You will need that. So don't let go of it. But do be aware that you don't want to say things that are way off and look like you're absolutely certain when it's wrong. So there isn't a... Exactly. Good, well said. So that's how topical. Be honest, but let's also acknowledge we are doing a practice. So maintain that confident look and everything, and then accept all the criticism that comes saying, okay, you missed this point, you missed that point, you missed this point, you missed that point, and then try to tighten up your process, your thinking, and your note-taking. So we've reached the end, and I guess it's going to be a goodbye for another week. I will send you these 2 talks, and I'm sorry we almost never finish. And I'm always wondering what he's going to say because I haven't heard this one yet. But I will send it to you, and you can hear it. Is everybody good? Anything important to add? No? All right. I will see you guys in a week. I hope I see you all on Friday and Saturday. Take care. Bye.